So, Becca Jackson, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. This is my first podcast, so I'm excited to see where this is going to go.
Wow, first one, huh?
Yes.
Nice. So, actress, singer, vocal coach, multi-hyphenate is what I have discovered from you. We'll get into it. Many local commercials, co-star roles, a national tour for Laura Ingalls Wilder growing up on the prairie. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yep.
And now television and movies, among other things. My God, I can't wait to dive into this. But first, I like to tell everybody like where we met or what we've done. And our paths have crossed a couple of times, but notably we spent time on an Amish homestead staring at a computer screen of all things. So computers and Amish homesteads, that somehow they jived for us.
Well, and I don't remember, I don't know if you remember how bizarre finding that place was, because it was in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And we were driving along that long pathway and you couldn't see anything. And then all of a sudden this stunning house appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah. It was off the grid, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then we spent the whole day inside. Well, I did at least.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, at least I got to drive a Ram truck, and I got to walk among wheat fields. And you just had to stare at a screen.
Stared at a screen. But
Felt
I
bad.
did a darn good job staring at that screen.
See that? Gig's a gig. You never know where the gigs are going to take us, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Nice. So, obviously, actress and singer and vocal coach. Right off the bat, I'm just curious, like a chicken or the egg kind of question. What came first for you? Was it acting or singing or both?
Singing first. I trained and wanted to be an opera singer for years, through pretty much all of my high school to pretty much until the end of college. And then I trained exclusively in classical, so French, Italian, German, Russian, whatever language. And I graduated, and a lot of opera careers don't start until your mid-30s. And I realized I didn't love it that much. And then fully retrained my voice to musical theater, and found an acting school and started training in acting, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life. But I still retain such a passion for the classical genre and still teach it to this day. So I still use my degree in that way, but I very much veered from the traditional opera layout.
Interesting. You are, as we mentioned, a vocal coach, and you operate the Becca Jackson studio for vocal training and classes. So, and we're going to get into what you referred to as repertoire optimization, which I think is a cool kind of phrase. But why not? Let's just get into it. So you help students find their voice and master different singing styles. I assume that's what repertoire optimization can be, along with learning different singing styles.
Yes. So what's really interesting about the musical theater landscape is you kind of have to be a jack of all trades, especially the students that I teach, which is high school going into college. So it's usually college that you kind of hone where your space is. But if you look at Broadway, there's so many different genres that you kind of have to be able to audition for anything, especially when you're starting out. If you're a star, you can kind of find your niche and stick in it. But if you are auditioning for choruses, cruise lines, if you're auditioning for local theater, you don't know what's going to be coming through. So it could be something like The Sound of Music, or it could be Moulin Rouge, which are complete opposite sides of the spectrum, but they're all musical theater. So specifically for my students that I coach for college auditions, they have to have 4 different songs in contrasting styles in different time periods as well. And so you have to be able to go into an audition, and the hard part is you might not sing all of the songs, but you need to be equally good at each of those songs, because if, say, the panel chooses something that isn't your forte and you haven't practiced it, and 9 times out of 10 that's what they choose, I feel like they sense it in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are prepared, or at least know the basics of that style, you won't get into the school, or you won't get into the show.
So you teach them, obviously, preparation to have all these songs in their back pocket ready to go, because that's the job of the school, is to vet where these kids are and what they have talent-wise, and it's your job to inform them of that and to get them ready.
Yes, especially for, because I teach some professionals, but a lot of professionals don't take lessons, which is shocking to me. But when you are going to college auditions in particular, they're searching for potential. So they're not necessarily looking, some schools are looking for a final package, but a lot of schools are trying to see, okay, this is where the student is now, this is where we see them 4 years in the future. And every school wants a big star to come through their program. So you kind of want to go, I have the potential to be that big star for you guys.
Yes. Everybody wants a national championship.
Yep.
Case in point, local Villanova University. Just look at how they're expanding. My God. But we're going to get, since we're on the theater train, like, did it start early for you? I mean, most of the guests I've had so far are late bloomers, myself included. A lot of people that I've interviewed got involved in acting in their 30s, believe it or not. But I'm guessing for you, it was much earlier.
Ever since I could walk. So my mom is a voice teacher as well. And then my dad was an artist. So I was always surrounded by the arts. And I honestly, I think my first show, I played a sheep in the Christmas story at church, and I loved it. I was bit. I was like, I took it very, very seriously. And so the next year I was an angel, and I thought I was a great angel. I was really into it. And then I did musicals, primarily musicals, and then classical, like choir shows and classical competitions, things like that. So no, yeah, I've been doing it for, I can't even remember all the shows I've been in at this.
Mm-hmm. At least you got to play an angel and a sheep. I was a narrator in our kindergarten nativity scene play at St. Mark in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I was able to read. I wasn't necessarily character driven yet, but my mother read to me right out of the womb, so I could read big words when I was in kindergarten and first grade. So, Paul, you're the narrator. Fine. I remember the big red tie, the big red bow tie, and the green V-neck sweater, and off I went. So it started for me early too, but again, I think maybe 25 years went by before the acting bug reared its ugly head again. So, but at least you did something about it. I
find that theater people start earlier, and a lot of people join film and TV later. Because even I was young. I was 22, 21, 20, somewhere in my early 20s when I started doing TV and film. But a lot of the people that I did classes with or things like that were a lot older. And I teach students in their late 30s, 40s who are just starting film and television, which is always exciting because there's always a place, regardless of age, I found, which is pretty cool.
Speaking of theater, your credits include productions at the Resident Theater Company, Hunterdon Hills Playhouse, Bucks County Center for the Performing Arts, and of course the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. I mean, and then among those, I noticed a national tour, as I mentioned at the top, for Laura Ingalls Wilder, Growing Up on the Prairie. How did that happen? And when you did the tour at that time in your life, did you feel like, this is it can't get any better, I've made it?
No, not at all. I did not think I'd made it because it was a children's tour, which was awesome. but it was a much smaller scale production. And the way I auditioned, it's with a company that I love called Arts Power. It's a really great starting company for young artists. I really recommend it. But I had auditioned because it was always my dream to do Phantom of the Opera as Christine when I was young. And I bombed an audition, completely bombed an open call. And so I'd been, at that point in my life, I was traveling to New York 3 or 4 times a week from Philadelphia on the megabus. And so if I had an audition, I went, you know what else is auditioning? And I just showed up and I did something from my book and it went really well. And what I will say about National Tour, I didn't think I had made it at that point, but it was so fun because I've toured the entire US. I have 4 states still to visit, but through that I got to see the entire country in my early 20s, which was, amazing. Like, not many people get the chance to, travel like that, and mine was paid for.
Nice. A paid tour of America. What more could you want, right?
Yeah, not much more. It was fun.
Awesome. So clearly you had the stage resume established early on. And then I guess 5 some odd years ago, I noticed that you started making short films for your reel, for your resume. I could only assume that you wanted to branch into TV and film. And what I admire about that is that you took the bull by the horns. Some people would just complain. Some would say, I have an agent. The agent isn't getting me work. I can't even book a student film, but you're making short films. So tell me about what drove you to do that and what did you learn from those early goings?
Well, as I tell my own students this, always be creating your own art. Always, if you stop as an actor making material, you're in a bad place. Because a lot of the things that are going to pay the big bucks are commercials or industrials or not narrative work, which is great. I love doing commercials, but I'm not diving into the depths of a character in a commercial. I'm selling a product, and that's my job. So back in the early days of my career, I was doing a whole bunch of industrial work, which I'm assuming a lot of people who are going to be listening to this podcast know what it is, but I'll go into a brief explanation. It's essentially when a company hires you for in-house work where you're doing essentially a lot of jargon. And usually sometimes it'll be with a teleprompter, sometimes it won't be, but your job is to get as much information out as possible in an entertaining way. So I'd been doing a lot of that, but when you do industrial work, you don't get your footage. At least I haven't. I don't know about you. I've been in so many industrials. I've never seen a single clip.
Once in a blue moon for me, and I mean a blue moon.
Yeah, I've never seen it. So I was working a lot, but I had nothing to show for it.
Right.
At that time, there were there still are a whole bunch of companies that offer to write and film and shoot a reel for you. And I personally don't recommend this because no one is going to know what characters you want to play or what stories you want to tell better than you. So I decided to write 4 short films of characters that I would love to play today, and went through the whole process of producing, casting, hiring a director, a cinematographer, lighting, sound, everything. And I learned so much about being behind the camera and what being a producer is like, as well as the acting side of it. And I think for any actor, that's super, super important to not just be an actor, but to also understand the whole industry, at least at a basic level. So I had so much fun, and I still produce my own work today, and hopefully more in the future. But it's something that I tell everyone, because cameras are so good, your iPhone, you can use your iPhone to film a short film and it looks great, and hire an editor on Fiverr and do it the bare bones, but you'll learn so much.
There's no excuse anymore, is there?
No. There really isn't. And especially I even tell my students, TikTok exists. It's such a low barrier of entry, but such a great storytelling device.
Mm-hmm.
Make short films, do small scenes. It's all practice. And the worst thing that can happen is you go viral for being stupid, which honestly we found out that it still works in people's favor. It's still like, why not? But
the Hawk 2 girl. That's all you got to say, right?
I guarantee she's going to be on my dream show, Law and Order SVU, before me.
I am stunned by the ascent of that woman. I mean, that's more. I throw my hands in the air and shake my head and go, "How on God's green earth did that happen?" I mean, that's even more bizarre than just being discovered on the street, quote unquote, by the producer, by the director. I mean, that's the world we live in, where that wasn't a lightning strike. That was an atom bomb going off for that girl. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. But this wasn't a case for you with the short films where you were just getting some friends together and saying, "Hey, let's do this." You were actually hiring people.
I hired people and some were friends.
Okay.
So the whole process, if you've worked in this industry long enough, especially as a local actor, you end up working with the same people over and over again. Mm-hmm. So the lines kind of blur between professional and friendship, and it all ends up being one big, everybody knows each other.
Right. But getting back to the TikTok thing, I think kids don't realize how easy it is for them today in terms of the avenue is there, the method is there. Like, the platform exists. They just have to have the idea and execute it. This isn't the 90s, the 80s, and before, where a film school kid may have had ideas, but you had to go to film school just to have access to film stock and to get a camera and to shoot maybe an 8mm, 16mm in black and white and be grateful for that. Now we have, like you said, with iPhones, cinematic capabilities are there. So it's a question of, what's in your head, what's in your heart, what do you want to communicate to the world? And again, I'm a little longer, I'm getting longer in the tooth. I'm a little older now, so I'm still not completely accustomed to the short formats of the TikTok world and all. But like you said, for kids to have that avenue, what better opportunity have they ever had artistically to showcase their stuff?
Yeah, you don't. And I use it for my business. The Becca Jackson Studio is my TikTok. Mm-hmm. I just, post educational, funny content on there. And it's a way to connect. And mm-hmm. in my experience, the connections I've made have gotten me my best jobs.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Always get, it's who you work with. If you work well, the opportunities are there.
Right. Always. So before we get to the best jobs, I want to keep going and progressing from the short films to about maybe 8-9 years ago, 2013. So what I discovered from you, and this goes into the I'm shocked, but I'm not surprised department. You competed in the Miss America pageant.
I did.
So you got to tell me, what on earth was it like to be Miss Delaware?
Amazing. It was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, because I just got to go across the state. I met so many unique, interesting people. I got to experience, a NASCAR race. I went to Florida. I went to New York. I had all these opportunities opened up to me through that. And then I got to compete. It was my first experience being on national television in a live format. And, I tell my students this all the time. One of the hardest things about being an actor is working with your own nervous system. Acting as an art form is really simple, but it's not easy. And so being able to experience what it's like as soon as those lights turn on, you see the red light and you're live, being able to conquer essentially your heart beating out of your chest and go, okay, this is okay. I'm not in danger. This is just film. But learning that, I was around 21 at the time, learning that at an early age was really, really helpful. And I got a lot of stage time. I performed, I sang all over the state, all over the country during that time, which was, again, a very unique experience. And because of that organization, I graduated college debt-free, which in my opinion has been my number one thing that has helped my acting career, is having no college debt and not having to worry about that post graduation.
Mm-hmm. Unreal. So you got to sing, you got to perform, you were in a sense an ambassador that entire time. I can't imagine more of a launching pad, even if it doesn't turn into, gigs per se after the fact, just what it does for your confidence. My God. So you're the first Miss America I've ever met. So it's kind of cool. And it was a delightful surprise to discover that about yourself.
Yeah.
My God.
So at this point, it almost feels like a different lifetime, but being Miss Silver was great, and going to Miss America, one of the best moments of my life. And I really recommend it to anybody who wants to compete. Should give it a try.
I can imagine. I can't imagine, but God bless you. What a trip. What a trip indeed. But I noticed a couple quotes on your social media that I really resonated with. I mean, one in particular was Joseph Campbell. I discovered you and I have, I guess, an affinity for the mythologist, the author, the lecturer, the great Joe. And one of the quotes you had on Instagram was, "Participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. We cannot cure the world of sorrows, but we can choose to live in joy. The warrior's approach is to say yes to life." So that resonates with me. When I was a younger man, I read Reflections on the Art of Living, and that book informed the choices I've made and the decisions I've made and how I lived my life for the last 20 years. So before there were, Instagram inspirational pages and all, there was Joe and people before him. But it was nice to read that from you. And have you read anything from Joe in terms of his work? Did it resonate with you at an earlier age?
Honestly, I can't remember what books I have read. I'm an avid reader. Mm-hmm. I read a lot. It's where I get a lot of my inspiration from. Whenever I write down quotes that inspire me. But if I had to say a book that really shaped me, it's probably one of the most cliche ones, but The Artist's Way.
Cameron.
I recommend that to every student that comes to my studio. And then The Poet Hafiz. Mm-hmm. Those two are the most prominent in my artistic life and journey. And I do the Artist's Way once a year. I've done it once a year for the past 7 years, I think, of my life. And it's interesting to see how it changes. Regardless, the book stays the same, but the way I want to be an artist, the way I want to put my art into the world changes drastically depending on where I am in my life.
Right. Isn't it funny how the book stays the same, the movie stays the same, but our interpretation and how we view the material evolves. That's what's fascinating to me about our psyches and art, is that it can change. Yeah, it's never static one way or another. The art form does change through our interpretations in our minds. It's dynamic in that way, and I like that.
Yeah.
But speaking of quotes, this is a direct quote from you.
Oh.
And it's an honor to quote this one. "I'm officially a character actress, but what I want to be is a cult film actress. I want to collect them all: horror, monster, disaster, Hallmark. I want to sit at Comic-Cons and meet the people who are as obsessed with movies as I am. So you've done stage, you did a world tour, you've done shows, but you are obsessed with movies. So I have to assume that this is the next step in Becca's evolution. And you recently did a film with Dan Lance, the director, called Cash Storm. So tell me how that came about. And did Cash Storm, whet your beak, so to speak, for more cult films or anything in particular? Like, I'm just curious about the cult film aspiration.
Oh, well, I've always been into nerd culture. I really love unique underground films. When I was back before it was cool, my dad introduced me to The Room, which is probably the most popular cult film. My favorite is a cult film called Kung Pao, which no one's heard of, or a very select few weirdos like myself love Kung Pao. So these very indie comedy films I've always loved, and The Room always fascinated me because it destroyed these actors' careers, but they get to go to these cons and meet all these people, and now that it's a cult following, they get to talk to people that love their work. And I think as an artist, that's one of the coolest things ever, because I don't think anybody who works on The Room in particular thought that they were making a bad film. They said afterwards, but I don't know. I've been in a lot of projects that haven't been that great, but I still take pride in the work that I do, in them. I never want to be in a bad film. Sometimes I will be, and I know I will be in the future. But I would love for a bad film of mine to be a cult classic. And I love disaster films, which Cash Storm is, which it comes out October. Oh, I should have looked that up. 6th on Amazon Prime. I forget. But I'd met Dan because I had auditioned a lot of the projects that I've worked on. I auditioned for the same person like 3 or 4 times. And what I've always heard from people that I eventually get hired on is, we loved you, you just didn't fit quite well in that particular part. And Dan had said that about this, because I'd auditioned for 4 of his films, I think, in the past. And he was like, I loved your auditions, I love your choices, you just weren't quite right for the part, but I knew your body of work. Which a lot of times as an actor in film and television, you throw out your self-tape and you go, does anybody see it? Does anybody like it? And so I've had experience now where directors have talked to me, like, we loved your tape, we always kind of asked for you again and again, and finally something fit. So for Dan's film, Cash Storm, I actually ended up playing 2 characters because I have a very changeable face, and it's on my Instagram, which you can probably pop up on the screen. But I play an influencer and then a newscaster. And during the premiere of the film, Dan pulled me up because, without going into spoilers, my first part is very small, but then the newscaster is throughout the rest of the film. So I'm with everybody who's in the film the whole entire time, that very clearly them. And so I go to Dan, I say, you have to tell the audience that I'm both characters, or else it just looks like I'm a really small character, like walking up for the Q&A. And the whole audience was like, what? That was you? And so especially the past couple of years of my life, I've been playing a lot of just random characters. And I love never being the same person, and exploring the different sides of myself and different aspects of who I can be in these very different characters. Because commercially, I play pretty much the same character. I play a young mom.
Young I get mom. The dad.
Young,
like, really?
Well, again. And I love playing the young mom. But what's cool is, for my narrative work, I really don't ever play the same thing ever. And so it's just really fun because my reel is bizarre.
I think that's a good thing. It shows diversity.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all. If everything is just mom or, the same character, then that can't be good. Like, I understand typecasting, it's career longevity. And if it's your wheelhouse, it's your wheelhouse, a particular role. But you know how we are. We want to experience all the flavors of ice cream. We think we can do more. Occasionally we get that opportunity and we relish it. We savor it. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what, the cult film world can probably do. But quickly, Kung Pao, was that Revenge of the Fist?
Yeah.
Don't ask me how I know that.
I think it's
Kung Pao, Revenge of the Fist. I didn't watch it, but I remember the title because it was just so different.
Yeah, I love the film.
Now I gotta watch it.
It's in my top 10, but it's not everybody's favorite film.
Okay,
that's right there. It's one of those few movies where I gut laugh every time I watch it.
All right.
One of the few movies that I gut laugh every time I watch it. Because
you're drinking rare cups of tea, are you not, Becca?
Yes. I like different things. I like weird things. I would love to, the weirder the better. I want to be in all the weird movies, and hopefully one will hit.
The weirder the better. You hey, knock on cardboard here. You better be careful what you wish for with weird, because it can get pretty effing weird.
Yeah, I like the weird ones.
Oh my God, you'll have to bring you back once the weirdness starts happening.
Yeah.
But this isn't weird, but it's more of like, oh my God. But event you did Cash Storm, you're doing industrials, you're doing a bunch of commercials, and you're clearly uncomfortable in front of the camera. And then one day this breakdown comes out for this little show that's probably destined for YouTube, and it's being made locally. And okay, this is an opportunity. Let me submit and see what happens. But obviously the universe had more in store for this project. So tell me about how you transformed incredibly, amazingly into Jamie for Tires.
Thank you. I love that character. I love playing Jamie. But actually, that wasn't the story at all with Tires. I had been working with John years ago. John McKeever, who's the director of Tires. He was one of my first commercials. I didn't even have an agent or anything when I worked with John for the first time. And I just remember him being so funny. Everybody he brought on his sets were funny. And I remember just laughing and laughing and laughing. And they were all comedians. I'm not a comedian. I very much play like it's called the straight man versus the funny guy in comedy. I'm very much the straight man in the comedy. And even Jamie of Tires, I consider more of a straight man character. She's very in her personhood. She's not necessarily the funny one versus Shane, who is incredibly funny. So bouncing off of him within the reality of my character is always very fun. But I had Tires came, oh gosh, it was sometime last year, but I had done multiple projects with both of them. I'd done, they previously did a TV series called Gillian Keeves, not TV, a web series called Gillian Keeves that was cult popular. It kind of had like a little cult following, and previous to that, they had something called, oh gosh, can't even remember what it was called now. But I had done multiple projects with them in the past. And Tires came through, and I auditioned with them through Here Casting, whom I love. We all love Here Casting. In Philadelphia, they're the best. And so I had gotten a call through Herein, and I had auditioned for an entirely different part. I had auditioned for one of the bikini girls.
The car wash girls.
One of the car wash girls. It was bikini girls.
Yes. We're going to have a few of them on the podcast.
But I had auditioned for that. And then John was like, "Oh my gosh, you're here. I have a completely different part for you." And I didn't even audition for the part of Jamie. So I had auditioned for the character I played was very stereotypically dumb blonde, like working at a car wash. I'm so excited, like that kind of character. And he was like, "Were you comfortable playing white trash?" And I was like, "Yes."
I'm glad you said it.
My roots. Well, that's what I was for. And my my whole family just a history in different parts of my life. I'm very familiar with that side of myself. So I was like, yeah, let's go. and got I don't even remember when I got the sides, but it was a very quick turnaround from booking to filming. And what was great is I knew everybody. I had worked with Shane before, not much because he was always the lead, but I played counter to him in a couple of his shorts, and so knew him, which was great and always makes me feel comfortable. Worked with John many times in the past, so I felt very comfortable. And what was great about it is I felt like I could make a big choice with that character, and the fact that it blew up as it did was great because I also didn't feel, if I was, it would have been my first Netflix show. I probably would have felt more pressure if it was, you booked Netflix. But because I had been working creatively with this whole group before, I felt really comfortable to just take a swing. And then it ended up working out.
You were among friends and you were comfortable, and the expectation wasn't there. Now, obviously, it's going to be different for season 2. Do you think you're coming back?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope I come back. I would love to go and be the character again. But honestly, I don't feel that pressure, even if they called me back. Just because now that I've done it, I feel like I know the character. I know what my part would be in exploring that, and I really trust John and Shane with their vision with it. And it almost feels, if I were to come back, I just love working with them. It's fun. It's really fun, and they're local. And what I will say about both John and Shane is they bring people up. Like a lot of people who either make it or get famous, they kind of move away and move on. But both of them, they really want to encourage people in this area, and I really appreciate that. And I don't take that for granted. So even if I'm not in season 2, I'm very excited to see where it will go. And the fact that I'm in the first season of a successful Netflix show is pretty darn cool.
I sincerely hope so. I saw that splash page on Netflix with you sitting there, and I did not recognize you.
No, so
with the makeup, I thought when I realized it was you, my jaw dropped.
Well, that's what most people have said, because I posted that I was in the show, and many of the people that I'd gone to college with who didn't even know that I was a professional actress at this point went, "I watched the whole show. Where are you?" And I'm in the 3rd episode of Jamie, and they went, "No." So that always feels really good if people just don't recognize you at all.
But I don't know. I think it's like, it would have been cooler if they just knew you immediately, but you had to alert it to them after the fact. It's like, hey, you just watched me. You know what I mean?
I'm in it.
So with Tires, once you realize that this is growing legs, this is only number 1 on Netflix. I mean, what were you thinking? Has that changed you at all? Is it a shot of adrenaline in your system? Do you want more of it, or are you being kind of zen in terms of like, I'm not getting too high, I'm not getting too low?
Honestly, as an actor, anytime I get to work, I feel, regardless of the project, I feel I'm so happy, you know? So the fact that it was really cool that it came out when it did, because a lot of the times the things that I do, and a lot of actors experience this, it's not very forward facing. So I'm very lucky in that I do decently well as an actress. And I work my whole life between my teaching studio and acting is all the creative arts. But this was probably the first project where everybody around me went, oh, she's actually doing it. and I went, I've been doing this the past 10 years, but this is the one that hit. And I was just happy that it hit, and it was so local and true to its roots, true to its vision. Was with a bunch of people I knew. I knew a lot of people on set. So the fact that it got so popular and big, I couldn't ask for anything more, because I know everybody who was on that set, everybody wanted it to do well and had really good intentions. And I don't know, it did something different, which I always like.
It's wonderful when the flower opens like that and blooms. It's rare, but when it happens, you can't ask for anything more.
No. I hope I get to come back. But if not, I can't wait to watch the next season and see how big. I hope it blows up even more. I hope everybody on that show, I hope it changes all their lives.
Why wouldn't it? At least you got recognized for a legit Netflix show. I am recognized along your lines for Wawa Pizza.
Oh, Wawa, it's my white whale. Wawa,
I'm Pizza, you're a show.
No, Wawa, please hire me. I love you.
But that's the other thing too. Like, I tell people, like, I never thought for a minute that I would ever book a Wawa commercial, because I look at the Wawa commercials and I go, they're zany, they're silly, they're wacky. I'm not that. I'm not that at all. And then what am I doing? Oh, Wawa is pizza. And it's like, I guess I can be that way. So it's weird. It's weird. You just never, ever know. And I guess that's the game we play as actors in this business. It's like we're always playing roulette. We just never know when our number is going to pop up. And can you deal with that? Can you stay on the surfboard in between the waves? You know, can you get up after the wave crashes on you, and can you ride, the massive one that can get you a gold medal? That's the thing. Can you survive, essentially? I think the late Ernest Borgnine took Clint Eastwood around the room once at the Golden Globes, and he said, you know who all these people are in the room? They're survivors. So that wherever, if it's in Hollywood, if it's regionally, how long are you willing to survive? And I think, tell me your thoughts on it, but I think if you have the passion, if you have the willingness to stick it out, and if you have the joy for the work, if you're willing to do the work for free, don't tell anybody that, but then you can survive. And then I believe, and people have told me this, if you can survive long enough, you will have opportunities come along that will, if not change your life, certainly add to them. And I think for you, tires certainly is one of those shiny jewels on the belt.
Yeah. It feels really good. And the thing I know about being an actor is, especially regionally, it is a long game. I've been doing this for 10 years. And, I had family members, what have you done? What have you done? And tires was the first thing after 10 years where people went, oh, you did that. And then even with Cash Storm, I had a couple family members come and see me in a movie theater for the first time, which, once again, legitimized what I did in their eyes. But I've been doing this. I've been hustling for years. And what is great about regionally is there is plenty of work. You might not get those shiny gold medals all the time. They're pretty rare, 10 years of my own life for getting that. But I can say that I'm a working actor, and a lot of people can't say that. They're professional students, or they try to act. It's hard. But if you keep working at it, and it is a business, you treat it as a business, there is plenty of space for you, regardless of where you come from, who you are. Mm-hmm. There are roles. They're interesting, and you got to be flexible, and you got to continue to grow.
Yeah. I think there's a difference too between wanting to act and wanting to be famous.
Oh, yes.
And people, who are on the famous track, they get bumped off pretty quickly.
Yeah, because I also think I would love to be cult famous, as we've touched on before. I think that'd be great. I would love 10 really loyal fans. That would be amazing.
Just 10? Come on, don't sell yourself short.
Just 10. But I think actual fame is not something that I personally want. But to love, I'd love to be like an Ann Dowd. I'd love to be, like some really nerdy actors know who you are and people in the industry, but the average person on the street isn't going to go, is that Ann Dowd?
Right.
I will.
Mm-hmm. Famous just right? Right,
just right. But the A-listers, it seems like a lot of pressure, and I'd rather the small parts.
Yeah, I can't imagine the atom bombs that they're juggling with each project. Like can Ryan Gosling ever lose his abs? Can he just eat a pint of Haagen-Dazs and be happy?
I don't think so.
I doubt it. It had to be hell, like on Barbie. Yeah, he looked great, but what's he eating? A twig and a drop of water for 3 months? I mean,
for me, I love going to get coffee. I love sitting in a coffee shop, working on my materials. And I love reading plays in coffee shops. You're famous, you can't do that. Mm-mm. You can't do that. You lose that element. And then I also think it's harder to act, because your life is so different. It must be really hard to keep you grounded.
I can't imagine staying grounded. And I guess that's the price you pay for that level of work and that level of influence in the industry. But again, it's so fickle. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine people like Matthew McConaughey, who years ago decided, I'm not going to be the beefcake anymore. I'm going to be a leading man. I'm going to do it that way. And he walked away. He walked away for a while. And somehow, some way, the industry took him back. Usually that doesn't happen. If you shun the industry, they go, you know what? Too bad, dude. You kicked a gift horse in the mouth. Everything was just fine. You just had to walk that line that you were on. But you know what? Good for him. He came back. He did Dallas Buyers Club. He was already toward that fighting weight for that movie when I saw him on Wolf of Wall Street. And, it worked out for him. But, to make it is one thing. To do the movies and the TV and to be a name is one thing. To actually say, you know what? Thank you, Hollywood. Now I'm going to do it my way. Ballsy.
Yeah.
So, but we can dream, we can aspire, right?
Well, we can aspire. Some very indie TV show. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Parker Posey, look out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may not exist no more, but you know what? We're going to have to make them exist again, because I've said this before, we got to get past the IP only project thing of Hollywood. We got to take chances again. And if Hollywood's not going to take chances again with material, then directors, writers, actors, producers have to camp together. They have to band together and create their own ways of making material. Get someone in there who knows how to court venture capital or money from wherever and make stories that matter to them. Yeah. And it can happen. I just don't know the economic viability of that, but that's a concern going forward, is how do you balance artistry with commerce? And right now it just seems that Hollywood is 100% about commerce. And It's okay to have comic book movies and IP movies, but they're the only flavors of ice cream in the store. And there is such a glut and a dearth and deprivation of other types of stories about the human condition.
Well, where I think I agree on big Hollywood blockbuster movies, I do think we are on the cusp of an indie renaissance, because I love using the example of Shudder. Have you heard of Shudder?
Yes.
So essentially it's a horror streaming site. And because there's the huge like Blumhouse pictures and things like that really blow up. But there are these indie films that have a very specific following that do incredibly well. And I think Shudder is an example of that. And I think it can, horror is the one that's kind of proven itself in Hollywood, of like having a $2 million budget and then getting multiple hundreds of millions. But I think this can happen with other indies too. And I think it's going to start bleeding over, because I personally want the rom-coms. I want more rom-coms coming back, not big blockbuster. I want indie rom-coms, unique, different perspectives, different viewpoints. I think there's so much that can be done in a rom-com, but I don't think they do well in the blockbuster setting. But I think as somebody who loves Hallmark movies, I love them. They're not going to win an Oscar, but I watch every single one. And I think there is a space for growth in that area, and it's popular, but it's not super mainstream, as in going to blockbuster movies. And even the most recent one didn't do well, which was Fall Guy. But it looked great. But there needs some sort of middle. I think it's coming. I think Shudder is a really good example of what the potential is for film and where things could go, which I find exciting.
And you're going to be right there. Look out, Parker Posey.
Coming.
Assuming she's still doing it. It's been a while. But in the 90s, man, she was everywhere. I hope you're right. I do. I hope it's, even if it's niche production houses doing their thing, as long as the work is getting out there and it finds its audience. But, what happened to the Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan rom-com? You know what I mean? The $40-50 million, Nora Ephron-y kind of story. I mean, it's been a while. It's been decades. And you can't tell me that no one wants to see that kind of stuff. I mean, there's hard opinions either way, but not just not that brand of story only, but everything that has come along that I remember from the 70s, the 80s, and a bit of the 90s. There has to be, all the flavors have to get back into the theater. I sincerely hope that happens at some point. But, the conversation can tail into AI and customization, and you may have your rom-com, you may have your particular art house horror flick, but, the computer might be putting that together. And who's going to be able to pay their bills from that, because the technology is just going to be, okay, there's your movie, enjoy. So that remains to be seen. And
we artists got to create our own work. I so strongly believe that, especially with AI, because I think you are right. I think there will be AI movies, but I truly believe in art and humanity and people wanting to identify with the stories they see, they watch, because AI, sure, it can probably do a very generic story, but I don't know, humanity changes. People want to be taken through a story, an adventure. And I think it'll get even more specific. And again, it's back to, YouTube and TikTok and things like that. People are finding success. It's just different than what it used to be.
Indeed. It's always evolving. It's always changing. And when one way of doing business crumbles and another one comes up, another one blooms and blossoms, and can you grab onto that other vine, whatever it's going to be? History is replete with those examples. And I have faith as well. I have confidence. And trust me, I will be right there in line at the Comic-Con. I will be one of your 10, Becca. Trust me. That is my promise to you.
My first Comic-Con, I'll send you a DM. Okay.
Yay. Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with one more quote from you. And the touchy-feely quote that I found on your gram. And it goes like this. During COVID, I really had to take the time to figure out who I am and what I want to bring to this world. Being an artist, prioritizing human connection, kindness, and being unapologetically myself were my takeaways from that reflection. Pretty deep. And I think it's safe to say that we all did that to some extent. Is it safe to say that the way you're living your life now, a burgeoning acting career, having the voice coaching studio, is that a personification of that reflection?
100%. My life completely changed after COVID in such a great way. And I really took a lot of time to reflect on what I wanted and what artist I wanted to be. And I've created a life that I really love. And especially as an actor, it's such up and downs. If you don't create the life that you want to be living, the creative life that you want to be living, it's too hard. It's constant rejection. My percent rate of booking is 6%. So, and that's pretty darn good. But that's a whole lot of rejection. So if you don't create a life that you enjoy living, even if you don't book a gig, it's too hard. You're going to quit. So I really built up my own studio, built a community that even when I'm not on set, I still love my life, where especially the farther you get in this career, you can meet a lot of actors who don't like their life. And I go, there's so much room to create. There's so much room for work. You might not get the big HBO show that's like my dream, right? I may never get that, but I am creating work and creating art that I believe in and want to do. And I don't need a production company to tell me that I can or can't be in it, which is, I think, very important.
Wow. You have success right here and now. Beautiful. I love your mentality. I love what you've done so far, and it's only going to get more and more and more. I mean, I'm not surprised. Netflix #1, that it happened to you. It couldn't have happened to a more consummate professional and better human. Thank you, Becca, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really kind.
So you can see Becca on Netflix in Tires as Jamie. And for vocal coaching and training, you can go to beccajacksonstudio.com, correct?
Correct.
There you go. Becca Jackson, thank you so much, and I'll see you on set.
See you on set.